All right, we're doing 7-2, parallelograms. Looking at that word, what does the word parallelogram have in it?
Parallel.
Parallel. So I know I'm going to have something that's parallel. All right, parallelograms. A quadrilateral with two pairs. You have to understand what that means. Two pairs of parallel sides. I'm going to have two pairs, so technically four sides. I'm talking about four sides. But two of them are pairs. You guys are going to be turning your notes in, so please make sure you're writing it down. So I'm going to highlight it. Two pairs of parallel sides. That's my parallelogram. That's what a parallelogram is made up of. So before, we were covering triangles. I wrote triangles using a triangle symbol. So for example, here is my triangle. A, B, C. I represented this using triangle A, B, C. But now we're working with parallelograms. So I'm using a parallelogram symbol. Okay. Showing you my two pairs of parallel sides. I'm going to highlight it. BC and AD are parallel. And then I have AB and CD are parallel. How do I know they're parallel? Because they're giving me those little arrows. And they also told me it's a parallelogram. So in the questions, if they're asking, find the two pairs of parallel sides in a parallelogram, they don't necessarily have to give you the arrows because it's telling you it's a parallelogram. So you have to know what's parallel. Again, it says parallel in it, so you should know what's parallel. All right, we're going to cover 4 theorems. Easy theorems. Nothing's too difficult about these theorems. The first one is basically what we went over. Okay, opposite sides. Opposite sides are congruent in a parallelogram. So I'm going to highlight it. Parallelogram. Opposite sides are congruent. That's super, super important for you to know. Right here, I'm going to highlight it again. Highlight it in orange. And then now what's parallel? Finding our parallel sides. Finding our opposite sides. BC is congruent to AD. And if you want to make your little congruency marks, I would make my congruency marks just so you can see it. And then AB is congruent to CD. So again, making my congruency marks. They're congruent. And this is opposite sides theorem. All right, the next one, opposite angles. So we did sides, now we're talking about angles. Opposite angles. In a parallelogram, opposite angles are congruent. So these are my opposite angles. I have angle B is congruent to angle D. And I have angle AC is congruent, angle A is congruent to angle C. Those are both congruent angles.
Hey, can you zoom into the...
Yes. Which one, the top one or the bottom one? Okay, you have to know these two. Opposite sides are congruent and opposite angles are congruent. Questions on these two? Okay. All right, the next 2 theorems. We've dealt with consecutive. We've done interior angles, alternate angles, exterior alternate angles, and we did consecutive. So we're still working with that here. I'm going to have parallelograms with consecutive angles theorem. What does that mean? They're next to each other. So AB, if you add them together, it equals 180. Okay, they're supplementary. If I add the 2 angles next to each other, it equals 180 degrees. So AB is 1. BC, if you add BC, it equals 180. It makes a straight line. CD, if I add C and D together, it makes a straight line. And if I add AD together, it makes a straight line as well, okay? your angles that are consecutive. They're ones that are next to each other. If you add them together, it equals 180 degrees. So right now we've done 3 theorems. We have one more. Okay, it's not too hard. If you look at it, you could kind of figure it out. The last one has to do with my diagonal lines. So diagonals are going to bisect each other. What does it mean to bisect?
It splits the line evenly.
It splits the line evenly. So diagonal lines bisect each other. So when I'm looking at these, when I'm looking at the example, my diagonals right here, I'm kind of leaving a space in the middle so you could see where it's cut. BZ is congruent to DZ. And AZ is congruent to CZ. Okay, it cuts it in half equally. So I'm going to draw my congruency marks. These 2 lines are congruent. And then these 2 lines are congruent. So it definitely helps to see the congruency marks. They're not always going to be given to you. These are theorems. So they're not going to show you all these marks on here. It's for you to know that they're congruent, or it's you to know that you add them, that equals 180. Any questions on the 4 theorems? All right, example number 1. You're going to have a lot of information on here. You're going to write a lot on here because it's basically wanting us to put all 4 theorems on one image. So write small if you can. Number 2 is going to have like 8 pairs. So we're going to have a lot on that one. Number 1 says, name all pairs of parallel lines. So looking at this, who can give me one pair of parallel lines?
BCAD.
Good. That's a pair. BC is parallel to AD. So I'm going to write it parallel. I have BC, using my symbols, is parallel to AD. And then I have one more.
AB, DC.
Good. AB is parallel to DC. Those are easy. All right, number 2 is going to have a lot. All right, looking at number 2. Name all pairs of congruent angles. We're going to have a lot of congruent angles for this one.
Angle.
All right, so the obvious one. Opposite angles are congruent in a parallelogram. So who could tell me the opposite angles?
AC.
All right, good. AC is going to be congruent. Angle, don't forget your angle sign. Angle AC, or angle A, is congruent to angle C. What's another pair of opposite angles?
B and D.
All right, I'm going to represent it using 2 lines because they're different measures. From AC, angle B is congruent to angle D. Think of vertical angles. How would I name my vertical angles? How would I name my vertical angles? I can't say angle E is congruent to angle E. How would I say it? Vertical angles are congruent. How would I say it?
Angle BE.
So these are now my vertical. Angle what?
BE.
Angle BEC. BEC is congruent too. So BEC is right here. And angle DEA. Okay, I'm going from, look at it, I'm going from one with 2 marks to 1 mark. So I have to go from one with 2 marks to 1 mark. So these 2 are congruent, and they have another pair of vertical angles. Angle
CED.
CED
BEA.
is congruent to angle, so I have this one. What's the other one? How would I write it?
Is it A?
Good. A,
EB.
EB, perfect. Okay, I still have 4 more. Now I'm moving into my alternate interior angles. So, it's going to be a lot of coloring, a lot of drawing. This angle right here, I'm going to call it angle C. BD is congruent to angle ADB. That's 1. Then I have this one right here. Angle ABD is congruent to angle CDB. Now I have 2 more. I have this one over here. Angle DAC is congruent to angle BCA. And then my last one, angle BAE or BAC. BAC is congruent to angle DCA. It's a lot of angles.
Is it?
Okay, but all of those angles are going to be congruent. Questions on angles. And we have one more to do. Name all pairs of congruent segments. So, can anybody give me one pair of segments that are congruent? Segments meaning my lines.
Did we already do this?
Nope. Remember, diagonals bisect each other. That's a
AC.
theorem. Okay, AC is the entire line. I need you to split that up and give me a pair.
CE.
Perfect. AE and CE. I'm using my little purple marks. I have line AE. Segment AE is congruent to segment CE. What's another one?
BE.
Good. BE is congruent to DE, and I have 2 more. This one and this one. BC is congruent to AD, and my last one's going to be AB is congruent to DC. I basically put all 4 theorems in one image. This is all of it. That's a lot. There's a lot of congruency and parallel in here. So please make sure you guys have it written down. Questions on how I found any of this? Okay, next. All right, they want you to find X, Y, A, and B. So now that we know what's congruent and what's the same and what angles are the same, we can kind of find some obvious answers here. So which one do we know is congruent?
X and U.
Well, we're looking for A, B, and X and Y. Which one? So looking at these, B is going to be 9 because they're congruent. X is what?
80.
X is 80. How do we know that? Because they're good. They're opposite angles. And how would I find Y? This goes back to converse. Okay, so I'm just going to show you because that one's a little difficult if you don't remember. If I were to add these 2 angles in blue, it should equal 180. So I have Y plus 80 equals 180, and then I have to solve for y. So y equals 100 degrees. So you cannot forget, okay? You cannot forget the converse angles theorem. The parallelogram converse angles theorem. That's telling you, I'm sorry, not converse, consecutive. Okay, the parallelogram consecutive angles theorem. If you add two angles next to each other, they're supplementary. They're 180 degrees. So looking at B, remember, we're trying to find A, B, and X and Y. So looking at A, do we know what A is?
12.
A is going to be 12, yes, because both these sides are going to be congruent. Do I know what B is?
9.
Good, 9, because diagonals bisect each other. Do I know what Y is?
45.
How do I know it's 45?
Alternate.
Good, these are alternate interior angles. And then X is a little confusing, so I'm just going to kind of go over this one. It's actually, it should be pointing at the entire angle. So in order for me to find this entire angle, going back to consecutive angles, if I add these two angles right here, it equals 180.
45 minus 180.
So it's not just 45. Remember, 45 is just for this part. I also have that 35-degree angle.
45 plus 35 minus
Good. So I'm going to do 45 plus 35 plus x equals 180. 45 and 35 is going to give me 80. Plus x equals 180. Subtract 80. X equals, same thing as before, 100. And it's not always going to be 100. It's just these examples came out to 100.
Okay.
And then the last one, C. What's equal to what? Good. 4x is equal to 8. So I'm going to set it up as 4x equal to 8. Solve for x. And I'm going to get 2. Now what about my other side? Perfect. They're going to be equal. 3y plus 4 equals 13. Subtract 4 to both sides. Just solving it like an algebra equation. 3y equals 9. Divide by 3. Y equals 3.
It's a lot, Miss.
Once you know the rules for a parallelogram, it's just a matter of finding what's the same. It is a lot of work because this is a lot of notes to write down and then examples, but once you practice the rules, you should be good. Yes. Yes, I will zoom out so you can see everything. All right, the next one should be pretty easy, the next slide.
Birthday.
It's just asking for the perimeter. So go ahead and draw your parallelogram. Label it P-I-N-E. Label what they're giving you. And then find the perimeter. What does perimeter? What does perimeter mean? Nobody knows what perimeter means? Perimeter means some, what?
The outside.
Perimeter means the outside. You just have to add the outside. That's it. So find the outside, add it together, and then you're good. All right, looking at this one, I'm going to draw it for you. You have a parallelogram. And you have P-I-N-E. And they're telling me P-I is 12, so label it 12. I-N is 8. What else do I know? Labeling information. If this side is 8, what should the other side be?
8.
This side should also be 8. If this side is 12, what should the other side be? 12. How would I find the perimeter? Add all of them together. That's it. 12 plus 12 plus 8 plus 8. If you add them, what would you get? Good. 40 units. That's all you had to do for this one.
Who's doing that problem?
You guys could do that one. All right, proof. This is only a 4-step proof. You're not going to get a proof on the quiz, but you will get one on the test.
For one day.
All right, looking at this proof, 2-column proof. We're only gonna have 4 for this one. I'm not gonna give you a proof on the quiz, but you are gonna get one on the test. So making your 2-column proof, you have your statements and your reasons. My first one is gonna obviously be what's given, which we should know. A, B, C, D, and G, D, E, F are parallelograms. And that's given to me. They want me to find out, they want me to prove that angle B is congruent to angle F. And they gave me this, that these are parallelograms. Looking at this, I need to find a way to make B and F congruent. So by looking at them as separate triangles, I can tell you that I know the rule for opposite angles theorem. Parallelograms, I'm going to use the symbols. Parallelogram, opposite angles theorem. So what does that mean? I know that angle B is going to be congruent to angle CDA, and angle F is congruent to angle EDG. Is everybody following?
No.
Okay, you have to go back to opposite angles theorem. That's telling me that this angle is congruent to this angle, and this angle is congruent to this angle. I can't just jump in right away and say vertical angles, because I need to have some way to connect B and F. So now I can state vertical angles. Now I'm going to state in my third one, angle CDA is congruent to angle EDG. Do we all see how I'm getting 3? Vertical angles. And if you're looking at it, that's right here. If these two are congruent, what do I know about these two? They're also congruent. So I can use substitution. I'm going to substitute CDA for angle B, which makes it congruent, again, substituting EDG for angle F by substitution. Okay, I just used substitution for that. And that's it. I proved it.
All that.
All right, one more and we're done. This one's easy.
You gonna make me fail my test?
No, you won't. You just gotta practice it.
No, I gotta go to school.
All right. Example number 5. This is the last one. On notability, I know you guys don't have graph paper, but if you select the photo option at the top, go to photos, and those 3 little sticky notes, there's graph paper.
Which one?
On notability, the photos, you see the mountain with the sun? Select any one of the sticky notes. And then it's going to give you graph paper. All right, you should have added your graph paper. If you did not add your graph paper, please add your graph paper. Mine's different because I actually have a photo of graph paper. You're just using the one that's in the app.
Don't worry, I'm gonna change the color. Don't even worry about it.
So you could change it to whatever color you want. Make your axes, your X and your Y axis, and then all we're doing for this, I'm going to write the steps. Plot your points, graph them. So first step is to graph. 1 is to graph. Graph what's given. So W is -1, -3, 1, 2, 3 right here. X is -3, 2, Connect them. And then z is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 4. This is what it should look like. You're missing your y, so that's what we need to try and figure out. So first, graph what's given. Then I need to find my slope for WZ. Why do I find my slope for WZ? Because that's what's going to be parallel to XY. Okay, so that's what's parallel to XY. WZ is parallel to XY. So my slope, I'm just going to count down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my slope is minus 1 over 5. So now I'm going to start at X, and I'm going to now plot my point for Y. So start at X and use my slope. I'm going to go down 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and my dot for my Y should go right here. And this is what your Y point is going to be. My coordinates is 2, 1. You're just plotting the points. That's it. You guys are having your quiz on Tuesday the 30th. So you need to, we're going to have review Friday and Monday, and then you're going to have a quiz on Tuesday.